No matter the genre, video game developers have consistently relied on the same collection of enemy types. Alongside generic grunts that pose no real threats, there's also the stronger brute, the ranged foe, and those which inflict poison or bleed damage. And of course, you've got the invisible kind. In fact, they can be so annoying sometimes that these invisible enemies can make you rage quit. So let's have a chat about them. As I'm Jules, this is WhatCulture.com, and these are 10 invisible enemies that made you rage quit. Number 10. The Kaernk. Amnesia, The Dark Descent. 15 years after its initial release, Frictional Games' Amnesia: The Dark Descent remains one of the most terrifying horror games ever made. The pitch-perfect atmosphere kept players in a constant state of suspense as they explored the castle's foreboding hallways, never knowing what was waiting for them in the darkness. And one of the game's most harrowing sequences is found within a flooded area in the cellar. Upon entering, the sound of approaching splashes tells the player that they're not alone. The source of these watery footsteps is there's many different ways to pronounce it, the Kaernk, the Kaernk, or just the invisible, as I like to call them, which attacks the players whenever they're in the water. The goal here is to find the levers to open the door to the exit. Being unable to stay in the water, though, means that players must dash between crates scattered throughout the area to avoid becoming the monster's next meal. With only a few seconds to reach safety each time players are forced to step into the water, this sequence is full of narrow escapes that are far too close for comfort. The relentless terror tests the nerve of any horror fan. However, by hitting this beast with a crate or barrel, players can exploit a bug that stops it in its tracks, effectively killing it. But still, when you don't know that, terrifying. Number 9. The Gang Leader, Timesplitters 2. From its selection of time-hopping levels to its collection of zany challenges and stellar multiplayer modes, Timesplitters 2 is one of the best titles to ever have come out in the early 2000s. But not every part of this game worked as well as the main body, though, with Neo Tokyo being one of the title's rare missteps. Its cyberpunk aesthetic and moody soundtrack may make for one of the sequel's most atmospheric locations, but the badly implemented stealth section which kickstarts this level quickly turns this mission into a frustrating ordeal. Things don't get much better after players manage to sneak into the gang's secret base either. After sabotaging the gang's experiment, players are then tasked with eliminating the gang leader before they escape. Although this objective only occurs on the easier difficulty, there's nothing simple about it. Alongside turning himself invisible, their escape route takes them through a gauntlet of enemies which block the path. In the time it takes to get past these enemies, players will have lost track of where the leader has gone, guaranteeing their escape. A surefire way to succeed is to kill the leader as soon as they spawn, or to play this level on harder difficulties where players don't actually need to deal with this rather aggravating chase. Number 8. Invisible Haunted, The Evil Within. The twisted world of Shinji Mikami's The Evil Within is oozing with all sorts of horrors that want to kill grizzled protagonist Sebastian in ways that are as creatively gruesome as they are utterly nightmarish. With its limited resources and challenging boss fights, surviving to the end credits isn't easy. Making this game even harder, though, are invisible enemies that can ruin the player's day. Appearing midway through the game, the invisible variation of this game's enemies known as the Haunted are only briefly visible when they attack Sebastian or when a player lands a hit on them, revealing their tentacled face in all of its disgusting glory. While visual clues like footsteps or moving objects can indicate where these monsters are, players will most likely need to rely on sound cues to pinpoint their location. The Evil Within is challenging enough on regular difficulties, but when basic enemies can kill Sebastian in a single hit on harder settings, getting caught off guard by these unseen creatures is a quick way to get a game over. With some extra observation and careful aiming, players will be able to take out these enemies and avoid any nasty surprises. But nasty surprises they be. Number 7. BT's Death Stranding. In Hideo Kojima's beautifully bizarre Death Stranding, players take on the role of courier Sam Porter Bridges as they transport cargo across a post-apocalyptic America, constructing bridges, zip lines, and roads along the way. Rugged terrain isn't the only obstacle between players and their destination, however. The most dangerous threat are the BTs that roam parts of the map. Short for Beached Things, these ghostly entities are souls that have become stranded in the world of the living following the eponymous cataclysm and are only barely visible to Sam due to the baby strapped to his chest. The only way to tell that these otherworldly beings are close is when Sam's scanner activates. When it does, Death Stranding turns into a nerve-wracking horror game where players must move slowly to avoid detection, using the scanner's beeps to determine how close they actually are to a BT. If they do get spotted, they risk being dragged into a fight with a tough mini-boss. Although BTs are part of what makes this world so fascinating, their ability to end a long and arduous journey makes every encounter with them a stressful and indeed rage-inducing one. Number 6. Black Knife Assassin, Elden Ring. Like From Software's other Soulsborne titles, Elden Ring is crushingly difficult. Alongside containing bosses that could annihilate entire health bars with a single combo, the developers likewise sprinkled devious tricks throughout the lands between, and this included one area populated with invisible enemies. Deep within the consecrated snowfield, players can find Ordina, Liturgical Town. While it looks abandoned, this location hides the way to Miquella's Halig tree behind the magical barrier. To unlock it, players must enter an alternate version of the area and light 4 torches. But this is easier said than done. Although the place still looks empty, there are now invisible Black Knife assassins patrolling the streets. Threatening enough when they're visible, the only way that players will know that these agile enemies are there is when they're ambushed by one, jumping on their backs to deliver a devastating backstab. While players can avoid the ground by travelling across the rooftops, there is actually a secret method that makes this location more manageable. By purchasing and equipping the Sentry's Torch, players will be able to see the hidden assassins. And while they'll still put up a fight, players will be able to explore this area without worrying about unexpected attacks. Number 5. Chak. Halo Infinite. Although Halo Infinite didn't capture the heights of the original trilogy, its fluid combat and satisfying gunplay nevertheless reminded fans why they fell in love with the franchise. While the open world design and the addition of a grappling hook gave players more freedom when dealing with enemies, the combat itself was just as challenging as ever. Alongside new enemy types, Infinite also featured familiar foes such as elites, whose active camouflage and energy sword made them incredibly deadly. As frustrating as it is to get taken out by an elite in a single attack, Halo Infinite made this stealthy enemy even more rage-inducing with Chak. The game's second boss, Chak, is the ruthless warden of the Tower Prison, who players face upon reaching the top of the structure. He's an especially difficult encounter at this early stage of the game, whose speed and relentless aggression can punish unprepared players. While the newly acquired threat detector allows players to see where he is, staying on the move is essential to stay out of the way of his attacks. When a single mistake can lead to a swift defeat, Chak is one of Infinite's most aggravating bosses, especially when playing on higher difficulties. Number 4. Replica Assassin, F.E.A.R. Although the franchise hasn't had a new entry since the commercial failure of its third mainline title in 2011, the F.E.A.R series nevertheless made a lasting mark upon the horror genre, merging exhilarating bullet time combat with unnerving sci-fi horror and heart-stopping jump scares. There was rarely a dull moment in the ongoing quest to stop Alma, the series' main protagonist. Alongside being terrorized by disturbing visions of Alma, the first game also puts players up against a variety of appropriately creepy enemies, with Replica Assassins being the most memorable. Developers Monolith take their time when building up this new enemy's reveal. By only giving players small glimpses of them at first, they ensure that the suspense is wound tight before they eventually come face to face with one. Like other assassin enemies, Replica Assassins are agile and can cloak themselves to become invisible. They also like to cling to walls or ceilings to get the drop on players before retreating to another hiding place. Hearing the distinctive electronic hum that signals that these enemies' presence is close is enough to put players' nerves on edge before they attack, startling players in effective scares. F.E.A.R is a scary game, and these assassins are a large part as to why. Number 3. The Reaper of Bhaal, Baldur's Gate 3. There's no underestimating just how massive Baldur's Gate 3 is. Its epic narrative, versatile quest design, and assortment of subclasses and abilities, whatever build they desire, captured the unparalleled scale and freedom of Dungeons & Dragons that's made the tabletop RPG popular amongst fans for decades. Larian's RPG likewise features enemies from D&D's 5th edition. One of these is the Reaper of Bhaal, taken straight from the pages of Descent into Avernus. In Baldur's Gate 3, the devoted worshippers of the god of death, who they take their name from, are loyal followers of antagonist Orin, and are why many of the fights in the third act are so bloody tough. Not only do their extra attack and daggers, which inflict additional damage to anyone below half health, make them extremely dangerous, they also have a condition that makes nearby creatures vulnerable to piercing damage. But what makes Reapers of Bhaal deadlier is that they can turn invisible at the end of each turn, subsequently giving them advantage on their next attack. If players are unable to see through their invisibility, the best tactic is to use area of effect spells and attacks to find them before they down the entire party. Number 2. Veil Assassins, Wolfenstein. B.J. Blazkowicz has been killing Nazis ever since Wolfenstein 3D pioneered the shooter genre in 1992. While Machine Games' latest edition has given new life to the classic franchise, one underrated entry that's frequently overlooked is 2009's Wolfenstein. Developed by Raven Software, the plot once again saw Blazkowicz on a mission to stop the Nazis. This time it was to prevent them from getting their hands on a mysterious energy source that could grant them access to an otherworldly dimension known as the Veil. Playing out like a pulpy B-movie, the game pits players against regular enemies alongside soldiers who have been enhanced by the Veil. One of these supernatural new enemy types is the Veil Assassin. The result of Nazi experimentation, these enemies' newfound powers grant them lightning speed alongside the power to turn invisible and teleport short distances. Combined with their large health bars and high damage output, these sneaky enemies can land devastating combos and then retreat into the shadows before players realise that they're there. While Blazkowicz's own Veil powers definitely help even the odds, getting instantly killed by these unseen enemies in the middle of one of the game's chaotic battles, well, it's borderline unfair. And number 1, Bloodsuckers, Stalker 2, Heart of Chernobyl. Developers GSC Gameworks have done an incredible job making their version of Chernobyl as atmospheric and immersive as possible in Stalker 2. The constant danger creates a palpable sense of threat, which frequently transforms this game into a tense horror experience, especially when exploring its many pitch-black caves. There are a lot of things in the exclusion zone that will kill players if they're not careful. Alongside hostile factions of survivors, deadly radiation, and supernatural anomalies capable of ripping protagonists' skiff to pieces, the deadliest threats are the mutants that call the wasteland their home. And the most fearsome of all are the Bloodsuckers, humanoid mutants with tentacles around their mouths. Encountering one of these is a guaranteed death sentence for the unprepared player. Not only are they extremely fast, incredibly strong, and able to withstand a lot of punishment before going down, their ability to turn invisible means that players will hear their blood-curdling screams way before they see them. By having a Bloodsucker be one of the first enemies that players meet during the prologue, the developers teach you early on that it is always better to avoid a fight with these Lovecraftian nightmares whenever possible. And trust me, they were right.